Hi everyone, my name is Jade and I'll be going over the basic fundamentals you need to know in case somebody goes into sudden cardiac arrest on campus. Every day, approximately 1,000 people go into sudden cardiac arrest in America. With that being said, it makes it about 356,000 victims a year. In Hawaii, it takes the fire department 9 minutes on average to arrive to a scene. After only 4 minutes in sudden cardiac arrest, a victim risks brain damage, and every minute that passes decreases the victim's survival rate by 10%. When it comes to sudden cardiac arrest, time is very crucial and every minute counts. I'm a part of an organization called Project Coco, which teaches people of all ages all over the Hawaii Island how to do CPR and use an AED. By learning this information, you're making your community a safer place to be. Anyone of any age can go into sudden cardiac arrest at any time, even on a school campus. With that being said, it is extremely important for you as staff to know exactly what to do and how to act if this does happen. All Hawaii schools are required to have an AED on campus, so if someone goes into sudden cardiac arrest, the staff should know how to do CPR and use an AED. This video will go over everything you need to know in order to help somebody who has gone into sudden cardiac arrest. So let's get started. First, we will go over hands-only CPR and the importance of it. On a school campus, anyone can go into sudden cardiac arrest at any time. So it is extremely important for you to know exactly how to properly administer hands-only CPR. On a school campus, there has been many cases where students and staff have gone into sudden cardiac arrest.
Heard a loud thud. You have a feeling of helplessness.
And it was very quickly that there was people there with us, very quickly.
You really can't describe just the fear you had going through your...
That was real footage of a girl going into sudden cardiac arrest during her volleyball game. Luckily, one of the staff at that game knew exactly what to do and how to help through a program they have at that school. She is doing well today and has made a full recovery. If a staff member went into sudden cardiac arrest right now, would you know exactly what to do in order to help them? Or would you have the confidence to step up and try to help them? If not, that is exactly why you need to learn. This situation is something that has happened and can happen at any time, so it is extremely important for you to know this information. CPR is used to help increase survival rate by manually pumping the heart. CPR stands for cardiopulmonary resuscitation, meaning to resuscitate the heart. When someone goes into sudden cardiac arrest, their heart stops beating. So by pushing on the chest, you're pumping the heart, which is allowing oxygen to flow to the brain. Okay, so now let's move on to everything you would need to know in order to do CPR. There are quite a few steps and things to keep in mind when administering CPR. But first, you must identify whether or not the victim is actually in sudden cardiac arrest. A sudden cardiac arrest patient will suddenly drop dead and have no movement. They will either not be breathing or they will be gasping for air. After identifying the cardiac arrest patient, you must follow these steps in order to administer hands-only CPR. Step 1. Check your surroundings and make sure it is safe to approach. Make sure there is no oncoming traffic or anyone that looks suspicious. Step 2. Shake and shout to ensure the person is in cardiac arrest and isn't just sleeping. You can do this by simply shaking their shoulder and shouting, "Are you okay?
Are you okay?"
Step 3. Quickly check for breathing. If they are not breathing or they are gasping for air, then they are in sudden cardiac arrest. Step 4. Move the victim onto a place with a hard surface like the floor. If they are sitting down or on a bed, move them down to the floor. Step 5. If you're alone, call 911 yourself. But if you're with other people, tell one person to call 911 and another to look for an AED if one is nearby. And lastly, step 6. Start chest compressions immediately and don't stop until the ambulance arrives, you're too tired to continue, someone is there to take over, the patient wakes up, or an AED arrives. Some things to keep in mind are to make sure that your elbows are locked and your shoulders are over the victim, allowing you to push all of your weight down onto their chest. Push 2 inches deep in the center of their chest, right between the breasts. When doing hands-only CPR, there are 2 ways you can have your hands. The first way is to interlock your fingers like this. You can choose whichever you're more comfortable with. Most prefer their dominant hand down. If you do not want to lock your fingers, you can always put one hand over the other like this. Always allow the chest to rise all the way. By doing chest compressions, when you push, you're pumping blood throughout the body, and by allowing the chest to rise again, you're allowing blood back in. The constant pumping allows blood to flow through the body and oxygen to flow to the brain, which avoids brain damage or any neurological effects. You want to do chest compressions at a rate of 120 per minute, so about 2 per second. In order to keep a steady rate, you can listen to the songs Staying Alive or Baby Shark. If you start to get tired, it is good to switch out with someone if possible because shallow compressions aren't the most effective. But if it is just you, shallow and slow compressions are better than no compressions at all. Sudden cardiac arrest can happen to those of all ages, so I'll be going over how to administer hands-only CPR on babies and infants as well. For babies and infants, those 1 year old and younger, you must use 2 fingers and go about 1.5 inches deep. Instead of shaking and shouting to check for awareness, you simply flick under their foot. And for children, those who have not reached the onset of puberty, you can administer CPR with 1 or 2 hands, going about 1/3 of the depth of the child, or up to 2 inches deep. There are a few things that people fear when it comes to administering hands-only CPR, but I'll be going over these things and their solutions so you will not be scared when the time comes. First is, can you get sick? CPR is now hands-only and no more mouth-to-mouth, so you cannot contract anything from the victim. Can you get sued? Hawaii has this thing called the Good Samaritan Law, which protects you from getting sued since you're trying to help somebody in need. And lastly, can you hurt them? When someone is in sudden cardiac arrest, they're already dead, so they won't feel you pushing on their chest. If they do make it through, the worst they will have is a sore chest, but I'm sure they much rather have a sore chest than to never see their families again. Hands-only CPR can increase survival rate by double or triple, but if you have an AED on hand, it is best to use it. There is a lot of information to remember when using an AED, but it is actually quite easy. Not to mention that the AED will walk you through step by step on how to use it. So let's start with what an AED is and what it stands for. AED stands for Automated External Defibrillator, and it is basically a portable shock in a box. The AED's job is to shock the heart back into a regular rhythm. Since Hawaii schools are required to have an AED, you can most likely find one in the main office, gym, near the football field, health room, and more. There are a few steps, but it is quite simple. Step 1. Open up the AED and turn it on. Step 2. Place the pads on the victim's chest. The back of the pads will show you the placement of where they should be. Step 3. Plug in the pads. Once you do so, the AED will analyze the heart rhythm and let you know if a shock is needed. If a shock is needed, the machine will say shock is advised. Step 4. Tell everyone to clear away from the patient. If anyone is touching the patient while the shock is administered, they risk being shocked as well. Step 5. Press the shock button. Lastly, step 6. Continue CPR immediately after the shock is administered. But remember, the pads must be placed on the victim's bare skin, so you must remove or pull away any clothing interfering with the areas the pads must be placed. There are a few special considerations to keep in mind when using an AED so that way you can use it on anyone in any situation. Since the AED needs to be on the bare skin, what if they have a hairy chest? In this situation, some AEDs have a razor in them that you can use to shave off the hair in any areas that you need to apply the pads. If there is no razor, there should be extra pads. So in this case, you will use the pads as a wax strip to remove the hair and then replace the pads with the new ones for when you administer the shock. What if they have tight clothing on, or if a female has a tight bra on? Again, some AEDs have scissors in the container with them. If not, simply pull away the clothing enough to place the pad underneath it. What if the victim is in water or on metal? Remember, water and metal are both great conductors of electricity, so when using an AED, it is best to avoid these things. So if a victim is wet or really sweaty, dry them off before applying the pads. Or if they are laying in a wet space, try your best to dry them to a dry area if possible. As for metal, such as bleachers for example, you can still use an AED, just always be sure no one is touching the victim while you administer the shock. Can an AED be used on people of all ages? When using an AED on a child, some AEDs have a pediatric key which changes the setting to be suitable for children, while other AEDs have separate pads. In this case, sometimes the end of the wire will look like a teddy bear so that you know it is for children. If there are no keys or pads, then use the adult ones by placing one in the center front of their chest and one in the center of their back. In order to identify whether or not to use the adult or children's setting, determine the onset of their puberty. Check for things like facial hair or breasts. If they have neither, then they are still considered a child. Some AEDs have children's pads or pediatric keys that will give you an age range or weight range. For example, some pediatric pads will say for those 8 years and younger or for those under 55 pounds. What if they have a pacemaker? You can usually identify a pacemaker if there is a lump on the left side of the chest. If there is a pacemaker, simply apply the pad at least 1 inch away. Lastly, what if they have a medical patch? In this case, remove the patch and use a towel or cloth to wipe the surface dry. Okay, so now you know how to help somebody in sudden cardiac arrest no matter the situation. After watching this video, I hope you are more confident in your ability to help somebody who has gone into sudden cardiac arrest. Anyone of any age can go into sudden cardiac arrest at any time, even on a school campus. With that being said, it is extremely important for you as staff to know exactly what to do and how to act if this does happen. All Hawaii schools are required to have an AED on campus. So if someone goes into sudden cardiac arrest, the staff should know how to do CPR and use an AED. This presentation went over the importance of CPR and what it does, everything you need to know about doing CPR, and everything you need to know about using an AED. It takes a community to save a life. Not just one person can do it alone. So by learning this information, you're making your community a safer place to be. Thank you for your time, and I hope this information was helpful.